Welcome to the Lived Experience podcast, where we dive into the captivating stories of healing, growth, and resilience. I'm your host, Dr. TAMEA Ryan, and today's episode is Breaking Free, a Journey of Resiliency. And today I have the honor of speaking with a remarkable woman who has encountered domestic violence firsthand. Through her own journey of healing and personal growth, she has transformed her pain into purpose and became a passionate advocate for others that have also faced similar challenges. We'll discuss her inspiring story of resiliency, explore the pivotal moments that led to her healing, and uncover the empowering lessons that she's learned along the way. I'm excited to introduce Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining today. Stephanie is an attorney and a recipient of the Governor's Award for Advocacy with Survivors of Domestic Violence. And she's also a best-selling author, by the way. She's conquered the challenges of narcissistic abuse and has emerged as a beacon of empowerment and inspiration. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking time out today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. It really is an honor and a blessing
Sure.
to be here.
Thank you. Can you start off with sharing a little bit about your journey and your experiences?
Yeah, I found myself on the floor of my sister's bathroom, just tears streaming down my cheeks, crying out to God or anyone out there, like, why me? Well, I was a good person. I did everything right. I lived a good life. But why me? Why did all these things keep happening in my life? These traumatic things. Why did I kept attracting these toxic men into my life and then marrying them? And so I just found myself like, oh, what happened to me?
Mm-hmm.
And it was in that moment as well. I had lost my eyesight. And so I was blind for about 6 weeks. And,
Wow.
just kind of just crying out like, what just happened? And it was in that moment I felt the divine saying to me, Stephanie, it's time to let go of this victim story that has
Mm-hmm.
kept you stuck, that has kept you as a invisible person in the story of your life. And it is time for you to be the star of your life, of our show. And so for me, that transformation came when I let go of the why me and I looked for the for me in all of
Mm-hmm.
this. Because when we're stuck in that victim story, we can't see the lessons. And if we can't see the lessons, we can't break the patterns, and we continue to just recycle and cycle through the same stuff over and over again until we get to that place. And so for me, it was just really letting go of that victim story and becoming empowered. And that empowerment comes through knowledge and understanding what we went through, and again, letting go of that victim story.
Thank you for sharing that. I loved your point that you said of moving from why me to for me. And can you talk about that journey and what that process looked like? Because I'm sure it wasn't just an overnight experience where you just woke up and said, okay, I'm going to take this on. How did that happen for you?
Yeah. So, again, going back to that moment of just like, for so many years I just couldn't, like, all these negative things were happening. Why did I lost a house in a house fire? I lost a house in a hurricane. I had a
Yeah.
baby born with an extremely rare genetic disorder. My second husband's ex-wife died of COVID, and all of a sudden I had six little boys to take care of. And then, the masks
Wow.
came off. And so, but it was like in that moment, I couldn't see past the pain and suffering until I could see the for me. And so, what I did, I grabbed a journal and just said, okay, if my two ex husbands aren't monsters trying to destroy my life, and this is a big
Mm-hmm.
stretch, like, this is a stretch of the imagination. We have to, like, you just have to pretend sometimes. So,
Mm-hmm.
what if they are not monsters trying to destroy my life, but what if they were teachers sent here to teach me powerful lessons? What would that look like? And so I grabbed a journal and I just started with my first marriage. Okay, if my first husband was indeed a wise teacher sent here to give me these pearls of wisdom, what did he
Mm-hmm.
give me? Well, he's taught me that I need to have better boundaries in my life. Well, what is a boundary? A boundary is my own personal boundary. It is saying, if you do this, I am going to do this. And then you follow through with it. Well, for 14 years, he would do all of this, cheating, having emotional
Mhm.
affairs, looking for validation and admiration from other women outside their marriage. And I would say, I'm going to do this. But really, I didn't do that because after
Mhm.
14 years, I was still with him. And so I can say, thank you, husband number one, for showing me that I cannot be the boundaries police. I cannot hang out and guard and defend your boundaries and confront all these women. All I can do is have a firm, secure boundary for myself. And then going to husband number two, I thought I had boundaries in that relationship, but
Mhm.
I had a toddler fence. You know what a toddler fence is? They're those portable little fences that you can configure into any shape.
Yes.
That was my boundary. I brought that into the marriage, said, here's my
Mhm.
little toddler fence boundary. And I set it up all nicely. And he would come and crash into the boundary. And my toddler fence would fall over. And I would pick it up and say, oh, I guess that wasn't where we're going to have the boundary. Let's put it over here.
Right.
So a toddler fence is not a boundary. A boundary is something firm. A boundary is something you are firm. If someone comes up and pushes up against this boundary, then you do X, Y, and Z. And so going back to both my husbands, I can say thank you for showing me that I really don't understand boundaries and I need to have boundaries in my relationships. And so I just went through both of my marriages and just went through year by year. What did they teach me if they were powerful teachers
Mhm.
sent or teachers sent here to teach me powerful lessons? And when I
Right.
was done doing that, I could see where I needed more compassion. I could see where I needed forgiveness and healing. I could see what I needed to work on and release and let go of so that I could break these patterns of attracting these type of men into my life.
And thank you for one sharing that, but also being vulnerable enough to talk about your experiences. Because I think when individuals experience domestic violence or any sort of interpersonal violence or intimate partner violence, there's a level of shame that goes along with that and embarrassment. And having been through one relationship where you were experiencing abuse and now you moved into the second relationship. And so you thought, okay, I've got it. This isn't going to happen to me again. I know what I need to do. Can you talk about what were some of the revelations that you had moving into that second relationship? And now you find yourself kind of back at square one.
Yeah. So, at the time, I had heard of narcissism. The word is floating around.
Yes.
But with my first husband, I didn't think I was being abused. Because remember back in the day, even when I was working in domestic violence at the prosecutor's office, we were focused on
Hmm.
physical violence.
Right.
So, but what happens when you're in an emotionally and psychologically abusive relationship that doesn't look like traditional domestic violence? So,
Hmm.
I did not think I was being abused in the first marriage because he wasn't violent. He never
Hmm.
hit me. He never, put me in that apprehension of fear, but he would gaslight. I would walk on eggshells. I did
Hmm.
not like my life or my marriage. He was a horrible person psychologically and emotionally.
Right.
And so I didn't I didn't know. I just figured he's a cheater. And how many of us do that? We're like, well, they're cheaters. We put that
Hmm.
in its own category. Cheating
Right.
is abuse. It's emotional and psychological abuse.
Hmm.
And what it does to you is horrible.
Right.
It's traumatic. And so moving into my second marriage, I said, okay, I'm not going to be with a cheater. In fact, I had written out that manifestation, that list. I mean, we all do it. We all
Right.
make that list of, okay, tall, dark, handsome,
Mhm.
businessman, divorced dad with only little boys because I was divorced and I had little boys as well.
Right.
Um, Someone who's been through the cheating that I went through because they would understand me. So I
Mhm.
made this list and I put it out in the universe. Well, a week later, I meet a man who checks everything off the list.
Right.
And so, in hindsight, it's like, okay, well, the universe gives us what we ask for with all the
Mhm.
unhealed lessons and patterns and all that other fun stuff until we
Right.
sit and actually deal with it.
Mhm.
So, when in the beginning of a relationship with a narcissist, it's called the idolization phase. This is where it's fun. They are charming. They are wonderful, but uh, they mirror all your values. They mirror your
Mhm.
hobbies. They mirror you. And so you don't see that in the beginning. You just think you found your soulmate. Well, I had
Right.
just manifested him. So how could I not have found my soulmate? And when he's sitting there saying words like, "You are my soulmate," where were you 20 years ago? We should have been, we're meant to be together. I bet we
Mhm.
met like in, some other lifetime or something. It's
Right.
all the big lovey feeling words. It's like, of course you want all of that.
Right.
And because my first husband was a cheater, I went into this relationship with 100% trust. Like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm not going to look at his phone. I'm going to believe everything he says. I'm going to
Right.
trust him because I was already spent 14 years doing the opposite. And I
Mhm.
didn't want that. And the thing is that he knew all of that.
Right.
And narcissists do everything they can to get you to open up, to feel comfortable, to be vulnerable around them. And then when the mask comes off, then they take all your insecurities and all your vulnerabilities and they use it against you. And that's what happened during the devaluation stage is they begin to gaslight. So what you in the beginning you had this wonderful person who was charming, who mirrored you, who
Mhm.
um, was incredible. Everything you wanted in a person, they became.
Right.
And now the devaluation phase is where the gaslighting happens. And so many people kind of throw the word gaslighting around. So for the
Mhm.
listeners out there, gaslighting is when you manipulate another person into doubting their perceptions, experiences, or understanding of events. And so they twist your words. They It's a form of emotional abuse. So it's a
Mhm.
highly calculated form of manipulation and it involves destabilizing you over a period of time. But gaslighting is only possible if there's a trust relationship. And so, for instance, I couldn't gaslight you because we don't have that trust relationship.
Right.
Um, but as an attorney, I could gaslight a client because there is a trust relationship involved, or the
Mhm.
trust relationship between a parent and a child, or between family members because there is that trust relationship. And so why do they gaslight? They gaslight because it helps the abuser avoid any blame or responsibility for their actions. If they can
Mhm.
turn everything around to make it be like it's you, not me, then they get away with everything.
And in hearing that, because again, we are hearing those terms a lot now, narcissism, gaslighting. And so, everyone is being called a narcissist, everyone is being, accused of gaslighting, but it is a real phenomenon that happens. And as you mentioned, especially in your second relationship, when that mask comes off, you're usually already in the relationship for an
Yes.
extended period of time. So these red flags, and we hear this a lot of too, a lot of blaming a lot of times, it's especially in these cases. Well, didn't you see the red flags? Didn't you see X, Y, and
Mm-hmm.
Z? And it's like, no, those things were not showing right all the time. And by that
Yes.
time, you're invested into that relationship. And as a social worker, I've especially seen this play out with those that have experienced domestic violence or other forms of intimate partner violence. What work have you done? Because you did receive an award and you mentioned that you were in the prosecutor's office as well as an attorney. What work have you done in helping others through similar experiences?
Yeah, a lot of my work was many, many years ago, before my second marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what I would do would be a lot of safety planning. And it's something that I do now as well, because it's the statistic out there is when a person tries to leave these relationships, that is when it becomes the most dangerous. And that was also the most dangerous for myself when I was trying to leave my second husband. It's where it became violent. And so, a lot of what I help women walk through, and this happens to men as well. I just work with women,
Mm-hmm.
but there are many female narcissists out there who are
Yes.
very toxic and abusive to men as well. But so I help them navigate legal, because so many times, one, how do you leave safely? How do you leave safely without reacting and without it escalating to violence?
Mm-hmm.
How do you leave and actually leave for good? I really want people to know that there are resources out there and available. And it's everything that I went through. Because even though my background was many years ago working with women in domestic violence, when I found myself in this situation, I did everything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I reacted, told him he was a narcissist.
Right.
I told him I was leaving and taking the kids. And so it's like
Mm-hmm.
everything and all my training just kind of went out the door
Right.
when you're in the moment of all of this. Because again, I didn't really see myself as being abused,
Mm-hmm.
as being an abusive the situation. And so, yeah, everything escalated. I did everything wrong. And so it is my hope to like really instill that, um, we do it in a slow, methodical way, and so that it doesn't escalate to violence, and so that everyone is protected and safe. And then when all the legal stuff begins, then I help people walk through that process. How do you parallel parent with a narcissist? How do
Mm-hmm.
you get what you want in court against someone who will do anything in their power to destroy you? So, how do we prevent all that from happening?
Yes. And it's truly a blessing because you having that legal expertise, having that background, and many individuals, whether men or women, who are entering into the legal space dealing with domestic violence, they don't always know what direction they should take. We know, unfortunately, sometimes there's situations where restraining orders and protection orders don't always work, right? And so sometimes individuals feel like there's no hope and they don't know which door they should go through. So, um, and when you receive that governor's award, at that time, you still hadn't acknowledged that you yourself had experienced abuse. I'm assuming when you won that award.
Yeah, so the mask was still on.
Okay.
He was still very the perfect. Didn't come out until later. And that's the thing. And this is why I share my story as well, because here I am. I'm a successful woman.
Mm-hmm.
I came from a good family. There wasn't
Mm-hmm.
chaos and drama in my family. My parents are still married.
Yeah.
And but yet it happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a narcissist can charm anyone. And so I like to come in and talk about that there are so many myths
Mm-hmm.
out there, because you don't have to come from a damaged, broken place to
Yes.
find yourself in a relationship with a toxic person. That's just a
Yes. And
myth.
yes, and the miseducation that's out there, right? And we see this play out all the time. Why didn't she leave? Why didn't he leave? They had the resources to leave. What would you say to individuals who still hold on to some of those misconceptions and beliefs?
Yeah. Well, the one of the biggest things is the trauma bond. We didn't really touch on that. But when
Mhm.
you have someone, when you going back to the cycle of narcissistic abuse, where you have the idealization phase, then the devaluation, and then you have intermittent reinforcement of it's good, it's bad, it's positive, it's negative. All of that creates this word called cognitive dissonance, which is where you hold two competing beliefs about the person. In one hand, he's your husband, he can be loving, he can be wonderful, he's a good father, he's doing all these things right. When the other version of his personality presents itself, it's he's horrible, he's mean, he's the
Mhm.
worst husband, he's the worst father, my life sucks, I hate my marriage. And so
Right.
you have these two competing beliefs. And
Mhm.
because of that, which one is the truth? It creates cognitive dissonance, creates this fog, and you live in this fog of what just happened.
Right.
And because of all that intermittent reinforcement, it creates a trauma bond. And the trauma bond is the attachment to these two beliefs. If you think of, I always say trauma bond is very much like a drug addiction. The first time someone tries this new drug, they get this really high, and all these chemical release, the dopamine, the
Mhm.
oxytocin, all the feel good attachment chemicals.
Right.
And so then they use again, but they keep using, but they never forget that first high again.
Mhm.
Right? They come down. It's like, okay, well, anything to get back up there. And similar with the trauma bond, it's we know how they were in the beginning.
Mhm.
How do I get that person back? Well, let me stay during the bad times because I know that good person is in there. And who do I
Right.
need to become to get to that person again? And so this is why so many people stay in these relationships for so long, because we think if
Mhm.
I change these things about myself, if I lose the weight, maybe he will love me and I will get that first person back I fell in love with. If
Mhm.
I become more assertive, or maybe if I become a master chef and can actually make dinner right for once,
Right.
maybe he will stop behaving this way and I will get that first person back. But the horrible truth is that person never existed.
Mhm.
That first person you fell in love with was just an illusion that they created to get you attached and hooked and connected to them. And so to leave these relationships, there's only two ways out. You're either going to be discarded by them,
Mhm.
or you're going to find the strength, the courage, and the worthiness within yourself, and you will leave. And so I help on that end. But the statistic out there is, well, it takes 7 to 8 times of a person attempting to leave before they finally leave. And
Right.
I call this the hitting the terror barrier.
Mhm.
So what happens is you start to entertain these thoughts. Okay, maybe he's not going to change. Maybe life could be better without him in the picture. We start daydreaming, right? What
Mhm.
would my life look like if I was not in this relationship? Don't I deserve a person to treat me with respect and kindness? So we start daydreaming about that. Okay, now what would it look like if I did actually leave? And
Right.
so a person goes to leave, and then all of a sudden, it's all this worry and doubt. They're hearing the narcissist's voice. No one's going to believe you. No one's going to understand you. You're never going to find anyone who can take care of you and love you the way I do. You're
Mhm.
crazy and psycho. What are you doing? And so all those gaslighting words and worry and doubt come into your conscious mind.
Right.
And when you become emotionally involved with worry and doubt, it creates fear. And fear, you stand still in your tracks, right? Like a deer in the headlights, you just stop. So you might leave for one night, but then you come back. And narcissists are good at love bombing you back.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Not sorry for what they did to you, but sorry that maybe it went too far and now you're gone. So they need to get you back.
And the
So
cycle
you,
continues.
and the cycle continues. And so then, you're back. He's great for a week or two. Then he's back to the old pattern of devaluation. And so then again, it's like, okay, now you start entertaining those thoughts again. No, I
Mm-hmm.
should go. I need to go. For many of us, it takes 6, 7, 8 times until we finally can crash through that.
Thank you for providing that education because that's definitely an area that continues to uh, keep people from showing compassion, from showing that empathy because they don't understand truly that cycle of abuse and violence. With all that being said, how are you using your platform to continue to advocate for survivors of domestic violence?
Is it exactly what we're doing here right
Mm-hmm.
now? It's going on the podcast, speaking at events, and really educating families and also the victims as well. Because you
Mm-hmm.
have to look at these relationships as a drug addiction. So how would we help someone who is an addict? Well, one, until they believe that there is an issue and a problem, all
Yes.
you can do is say, I mean, you can't force them. They have to have their own awareness and admit it and get out of denial. But you can be there and you can offer that love and support. And so I tell people, you know what? I'm a safe house. I'm here
Mm-hmm.
for you. I'm not going to sit here and lecture you of what a horrible person you are, because it is an addiction.
Yes.
And so that's what I tell people: love them and be a safe place for them
Mm-hmm.
until they get the awareness of what they've been through. And then it's just the education. Let's break it down to those simple steps of what's happening, what's manifesting in your body when there's worry and doubt and fear. Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's chaotic. All hell is breaking loose in you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but through education and understanding is power. And so, I had some people who followed all my podcasts, and then they actually got up the courage to leave, and they've left, and they're working through all of that. But my purpose is to really explain what's going on internally, because I don't think that's talked about enough.
And helping people understand that it is a process and there may not be just a quick fix to get out of a situation for a lot of people, right? Or they would have left. As we talked about, it takes multiple times for individuals to feel that they're in a space where they can leave a situation. Where can listeners reach out to you to see what you have going on, connect with you? And we'll have that information in the podcast description as well.
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn and Facebook right now. So I'm revamping and getting stuff set up, and then I am creating a course for people to really um, understand what they went through.
And I just want to thank you again for taking the time out to not only share your story, to have that courage to be vulnerable with others, but also to pour into other individuals who are experiencing or have experienced similar challenges as well. And listeners, please, I will have Stephanie's contact information in the description below, but please reach out if you know someone or if you yourself are experiencing domestic violence or intimate partner violence. Please know that you're not alone, that there is support there to help you move through this situation in a safe way and work towards healing as well. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to leave the listeners with, Stephanie?
Yeah, we stay because we truly care and love this person, and we truly believe that they will change. But the truth is that they will not change, and the only person we are hurting and who is doing all the changing is us. And so the most loving thing that we can do is to let them go, and then muster up all the courage and strength to do the hard work. And it's so empowering. on the other side, and life is so much better and so much more beautiful. Even though it doesn't feel like that at the moment, it does get better.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. You are an example of a journey of resiliency, and thank you for all the help and support that you're also providing to others. Listeners, thank you again for taking the time out to check out this episode. We have more episodes on the way, and we will see you next time.